state updates, including now criminal referrals, finally, for FISA abuse. Oh, and other people like on the left actually lied to Congress, too. When will they be getting their pre-dawn raids with 27 people and amphibious vehicles, full-on gear? But first, we need to tackle what is a garbage new compromise, supposedly, surrounding border security. In tonight's Hannity Watch on building the wall and keeping the government open. So we have a bipartisan congressional committee. They have agreed to allocate a whopping $1.375 billion for new border wall construction. Now, that pales in comparison to the president's request for $5.7 billion, but would fund approximately 55 miles of new wall construction on a border that is 2,000 miles long. And we haven't seen the language, nor has the White House. Sources are telling me that it's still being worked out. But if Democrats are going to put a lot of restrictions on wall construction, in other words, that it's not really wall money, this is not a bill the president will be able to sign. He'll then need a clean CR. Earlier today, here is how the president responded to the initial details of this new budget deal. Take a look.
Sir, will you sign Congress's border deal?
I have to study it. I'm not happy about it. It's not doing the trick, but I'm adding things to it. And when you add whatever I have to add, it's all going to happen where we're going to build a beautiful, big, strong wall that's not going to let criminals and traffickers and drug dealers and drugs into our country. It's very simple. So I can tell you that, am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no, I'm not. I'm not happy.
I'm not happy either. Nobody should be happy. The president has every right to be angry. The so-called compromise is typical of the D.C. sewer and swamp, and its level of funding for security and safety of the American people is pathetic. It's almost as if lawmakers in Washington, from the comfort of their own, walled homes, they don't realize the horrors of sex trafficking, even young girls put into prostitution, human trafficking, the drug trafficking. 90% of our heroin comes across that southern border. It occurs every single day of every week, of every month, of every year. It's almost as if they just don't care. In the past 2 years alone, criminal, illegal aliens have been responsible for 100,000 assault charges, 30,000 sexual assault crimes, and 4,000 murders and homicides. It's as if they don't care. And that yesterday, by the way, 330 illegal immigrants, including many unaccompanied minors, were apprehended west of El Paso, where there's no border wall. It's almost as if they don't care about the angel moms and dads that we have interviewed on this very show. Children, their kids, senselessly taken by people who crossed their lives, taken by people that crossed these borders illegally. Have any Democrats actually called any of the families of these victims? Now, it would be perfectly reasonable. This is the time. That is a necessity. And the president, I think I know him pretty well, telegraphed that very thing just today. You just heard him indicate a coming plan, that he would find the other monies on top of whatever Congress gives him. Now, that would allow the administration to access billions more in wall funding. And by the way, the national emergency would be challenged, as we always see with the Democrats. They'll go judge shopping in California or Oregon or Hawaii. Then they'll go to the Ninth Circuit. And then, because of all the constitutional issues involved, being number one, an emergency, separation of powers, the president's role as our commander-in-chief, I think the president is on very firm legal grounds, given the national security risks that are stemming from a porous southern border. And additionally, the president has even further authority, which the Supreme Court, I'm sure, would look at. And that would be a real law, 10 U.S.C. 284. That gives the president, in other words, the executive branch, the authority for the construction of roads and fences and the installation of lighting to block drug smuggling corridors across international boundaries of the United States. Now, despite what the haters on both sides of the aisle are telling you, remember, before 2016, I always shoot straight with you. I've known this president for over 2 decades, and I told everybody, went out on a limb and said he is going to keep his promises and that he'd govern as a conservative and that he would work tirelessly to improve the country. Well, Let's see, the biggest tax cuts and the burdensome regulation. He's too originalist on the Supreme Court. Yeah, I was right. The haters, the never-Trumpers were wrong. And that's exactly what he's done. And I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be any different with securing our nation's borders. He is tenacious, and he will fight to get that wall built. And guess what? The vast majority of the American people, well, look at this CBS News poll. They support him. 72% of Americans agree with the president and his policies on immigration. And by the way, some good news breaking also tonight. The president just tweeted, quote, was just presented the concept and parameters of the border security deal. We'll be getting almost $23 billion for border security, regardless of what they give us, meaning Congress, wall money. It is being built as we speak. Let me interpret that for members of Congress and the hate Trump media. Sounds like a national emergency is going to be declared, but I have no insider information. So Democrats have agreed to over $1.3 billion and billions, by the way, more for border security. And Democrats are now agreeing to fund something, by the way. This is amazing because they were referring to building walls as immoral just a short time ago. Now they're funding these immoral behaviors. Watch this.
We know that walls do not save lives. Walls end lives.
We are aghast that he wants this giant 30-foot wall to be the symbol of America. I tell President Trump, I've told him to his face, we want the symbol of America to remain the Statue of Liberty, freedom, equality, not a divisive wall.
I don't support a wall. I believe in border security. I think a wall is not a smart way to make us safer.
A wall is an immorality. It's not who we are as a nation.
Security efforts as racist. Watch this.
Foundation of the wall is hate. It's fear.
Yep.
It becomes fear of the other. And then it becomes fear of brown people. And it becomes fear of caravans and fear of invasions and fear of MS-13.
Blatantly attempt to stir up fear of people of color, of brown people.
Nah, it has nothing to do with the fact that many Americans have been murdered, and there's sexual assaults, and there's, all sorts of violent assaults, and heroin, 90% of it coming into our country, and we have an opioid epidemic. Really, we're going to play the race card here? And I'll grant you, 98% of the people that cross that border illegally just want a better life, that which we take for granted as Americans. But playing politics with safety, security, even life and death, well, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of America's now radical, extreme, new socialist Democratic Party. Kind of like when Senator Bob Menendez was scolding the president for criminalizing illegal immigrants who actually drink and drive. Watch this.
The president's zero-tolerance policy that has turned everyone, regardless of their record, into a criminal. For example, if you cross the border undocumented, he has now made you a criminal. He is creating that problem by turning people away who legitimately seek asylum. If a person has a driving while under the influence violation, he is now making that, saying that that's a criminal.
If they come in illegally, they broke the law. By the way, it's part of the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Drunk drivers kill people every day. Senator, maybe talk to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or talk to a parent who has lost a child killed by a drunk driver. For the Democrats, this is all one big political game. Life and death, safety, security. These people need to meet these angel moms and dads and kids killed by drunk drivers. They really need an intervention. Sadly, the only thing they care about is keeping the government open, making the president look bad, even denying DACA and Dreamers things they say they want, and helping furloughed employees. No, nothing trumps hating Trump. The president fighting a life and death battle. Democrats are fighting for virtually nothing here, except that which they supported a couple of years ago. The president now has rightly made protecting our nation's borders and preserving American life his #1 priority. We all know the statistics. Radical socialist Democrats, they're calling walls immoral. They now advocate even for infanticide during the birth process, 9 months into pregnancy, calling for a ban of most forms of electricity, the lifeblood of our economy, fossil fuels, pushing an end to the consumption of meat because cows and flatulence, and yeah, being associated with some of the most bigoted, hateful anti-Semites in the country. This party, Democratic Extreme Radical Socialist Party, is a real-life dumpster fire. It's unfolding before our eyes. I told you this would happen. And tonight, by the way, we start with our Hannity watch on these extreme socialists. And of course, starting with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her insane Green New Deal, being supported by some of the most prominent Democrats in her party. Last night, President Trump called them out in a huge way. Let's take a look.
They introduced a massive government takeover that would destroy our incredible economic gains. They introduced the so-called Green New Deal. It sounds like a high school term paper that got a low mark. It would shut down American energy, which I don't think the people in Texas are going to be happy with that.
FoxNews.com, a new article this evening, even left-leaning union leaders, they're now warning that this Green New Deal will lead to poverty. They would like to work and provide for their families. And let's not forget that 2020 candidate, Senator Spartacus himself, Cory Booker, quickly threw his support behind Socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's absurd Green New Deal, which calls for an end to all fossil fuels. Oh, we're going to eliminate airplanes, and we're going to have high-speed rail. How are we going to get to Europe, Australia, New Zealand, trucks, even banning cows? Okay, they've lost their minds. And Booker, by the way, who is an admitted vegan, get this, I don't make this stuff up either. He's trying to justify this insanity, this platform, telling a vegan magazine, this world cannot sustain people eating meat. Only rich people he talks about eating meat. Are Democrats really trying to take the White House on a platform of banning meat, airplanes, fossil fuels, and rebuilding every house in America? The same party that is now for infanticide, the same party that won't stand up to what happened to, I believe, even sexual assault allegations and a rape allegation. If it's a member of their own party, many of them won't say, I believe now. Don't take my word for it in the case of Booker. He recently compared tackling the scourge of cow flatulence and other forms of carbon pollutants to our efforts during World War II. This would be a joke, but they're serious. So lock your freezers, save your meat now. You may need it. It will be very valuable, a great investment for years to come. And now even Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell rightly planning to put other Democrats on record. He wants a vote on the Green New Deal. Good going, Mitch. I want to see if it passes. Let's see where the Democrats vote here, because it will tell you everything on paper, just how radical and extreme the Socialist Party has now become. Rampant socialism, which guarantees, a job, a vacation, housing, health care. It'll take away your private insurance, and everything else that it promises to do, whether you're willing or unwilling to work, is not only the concerning ideology and the rise of the Democratic Party. Now another scary form of extremism is not going away, and that is the rise of anti-Semitism in the halls of Congress. Recently, far-left Democratic Congresswoman Omar made a series of disturbing anti-Semitic tweets while spreading an anti-Israel conspiracy theory, apologizing only for that one for offending Jewish people, but she's retaining her position. Get this, on the Foreign Affairs Committee. President Trump tonight calling on her to resign. But known anti-Semite Linda Sarsour, remember her? She's rushing to Congresswoman Omar's defense. No surprise there. Linda Sarsour is a friend of Kirsten Gillibrand, running for president. We're going to keep you posted on the bigotry of the left every single night and hold these people accountable, and we'll have our Hannity watch regularly. Now we turn to some other breaking news tonight. President Trump tweeted a big thank you to conspiracy theory TV MSNBC, who was forced to come clean about their Russia collusion conspiracy theories, which they've been peddling for 2 straight years. When's that apology coming? Take a look.
After 2 years and interviewing more than 200 witnesses, the Senate Intelligence Committee has not uncovered any direct evidence of a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. That's according to sources on both the Republican and the Democratic side of the aisle.
If and when the president, as he may inevitably do, point to this reporting, point to these conclusions and say, look, the Senate Intelligence Committee found that I am not guilty of conspiracy, he would be correct in saying that?
Well, except the use of the term not guilty is not really appropriate because they're not a court of law. That said, Trump will claim vindication through this, and he will be partially right.
That's right. You heard it right. The bipartisan Senate committee, Republicans and Democrats, investigating campaign fraud. No evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. None, including Democrats. And they have seen everything Mueller has seen. Now, of course, we've been telling you this for months and months and months. The left have been force-feeding with hysterical coverage the American people a steady diet of insane, bizarre, lying conspiracy theories every night. Just to remind you, take a look.
What do you got hard?
Well, Chris, unfortunately, I can't go into the evidence that's being presented to the committee.
Do you have something hard that you can't reveal?
I can't reveal that, Chris.
I certainly say with confidence that there is significant evidence of collusion between the campaign and Russia.
Vladimir Putin and his associates, somebody has something on Donald Trump.
As we are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
It's so obvious that they were eager to collude with Russia. Now we're seeing the evidence that there was a conspiracy to cover up.
This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
There's outright treason. I mean, there is no question that what he is doing is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
Is there any evidence of collusion that you have seen yet? Is there?
There is a lot of smoke. We have no smoking gun at this point.
Now, we have a lot more coming up, including criminal referrals on FISA and lying to Congress. Except maybe this time the pre-dawn raid will be at a Democrat's house. All right, joining us first, reaction to our top story tonight, Fox News contributor Dan Bongino, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo, look, I know conservatives see this, okay, a pittance based on the extent of the problem. And you know I say it's 2%, not the other 98%. We don't need to keep going over that. But this will stop, hopefully, the influx of heroin, fentanyl, gangs, cartels, those that come here and do commit murder and sexual assaults and violent assaults. And the Democrats don't seem to care. And the president that I know pretty well, I'm reading him tonight saying, sure, give me the 1.375. I have another 900 million over here, and I'm going to declare a national emergency, and that's it. But he's not going to tell us until after he signs that bill. If he signs it.
Well, I don't pretend to have him on speed dial the way you do, Sean, but I hope he does not declare
I haven't
a national
talked to the president
emergency.
about this. This is my knowledge of him, my insight.
Be that as it may, I think the president should declare victory. Here's why. Up until today, the Democrats have had the moral high ground. The wall is a moral issue. It's immoral to build the wall. Then they offer this $1,375,000, whatever it is. That's now a negotiation. It's not a moral issue now, and now it's a fiscal, financial negotiation. I think the president has already won, and he'll find the money, whether it's in the Defense Department, whether it's in FEMA, wherever he can, he will find the money. There's already 84 miles of wall being built from the last March's appropriation. Now with the 55 miles that's being built, with this new money, I think that
that brings us up to probably about exactly 90 miles. And Dan, look, I had to reassure there were skeptical conservatives because the president was more liberal when he was younger. Winston Churchill, if you're 20 and not a liberal, you don't have a heart. If you're 40 and not a conservative, you don't have a brain. And I kept reassuring people, I know him. He keeps his promises. He means what he's saying. And I went out on a limb when I said that. I also know him. If he takes this money, he's also going in the back door like he says he is. When he says he's going to do it, he tends to do it.
Yeah, he does, Sean. I'm not crazy about the emergency declaration because I'm always afraid of what liberals will do with it. But he definitely has kept to his campaign promises. There's no question about that. And listen, we need the wall. OK, the wall works. And what primarily bothers me about this conversation about the wall amongst the liberals and some others out there in the rhino class is they keep saying really dumb talking points. Well, it's old technology. Well, you know, a pulley's old technology, but it's effective. That's why we still use pulleys. Like, it's an obstruction. OK, that's what it's designed to do. It's not a perfect solution. It's a passive security mechanism that obstructs people from just randomly walking into the country. And Sean, they've never explained how technology is going to supersede that. What is it? Let me ask you a simple question, Sean, or Geraldo, if you got the answer, I'd love to hear it too. What is a drone going to do that a wall isn't going to do? Nobody's answered that question.
Take a great picture of the people as they come across the border. I like the wall because it will save the lives of the migrating poor people, 4,000 of whom die in a year in the parched desert when the coyotes abandon them. I think it will bring order to the border, and I think that's necessary on both sides of the line.
Dan Bongino, last word.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. You know, the Democrats also have changed this to a ports of entry argument. Great. Let's secure the ports of entry, too. Let's secure the ports of entry, build the wall. Sean, only amongst liberals is securing our country from unmitigated illegal immigration. Is that controversial?
I'll assure you, the president, when he said he wants a big door, but just to vet people, make sure that they can take care of themselves when they get here, I think that's all part of the deal. All right, thank you both. All right, directly ahead, a lot of breaking news tonight. So what do Americans think about the insanity of the Green New Deal, of Ocasio-Cortez and all the other Democrats? Lawrence Jones next. Wait till you hear a villain of the day.
We used to tell you that no illegal immigrant was actually illegal because no people are illegal. People can't be illegal. None of them are criminals. Well, it turns out, actually, there are some criminals. So there's a new approach. Criminals who do cross the border illegally, it's real, but we shouldn't punish them once they commit crimes here because that would be immoral. Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey just said that basically out loud. He lamented that the Trump administration wants to treat alien drunk drivers like they've done something wrong.
The president's zero tolerance policy that has turned everyone, regardless of their record, into a criminal. For example, if you cross the border undocumented, he has now made you a criminal. If a person has a driving while under the influence violation, he is now making that, saying that that's a criminal.
Coming from a guy who just somehow beat an indictment. I'd love to know how that happened. Yeah, you try a DUI arrest and see if you keep your job, but then you're not an illegal alien, so you're out of luck, looks like. Meanwhile, Menendez's colleague and 2020 hopeful Cory Booker says that meat eating is bad. It's like, you can't make this up. They're trying to get Trump elected. And then went on to say that veganism basically should be compulsory. It's necessary to protect the environment. It's unbelievable. Lisa Booth is a senior fellow at Independent Women's Voice, and she joins us tonight. Lisa,
hi, Tucker.
I mean, it looked just 2 months ago, Republicans, let's not lie about it, got creamed in the midterm elections. Democrats were ascendant, and then they started talking, and from what I could tell, Trump's numbers just kept going up. I mean, am I missing this? That's what happened, right?
I mean, I don't know if they're in cahoots with the president, because it seems like Democrats are doing everything they can to try to help President Trump get reelected. But look, listen to what Senator Bob Menendez said. I guess now he's saying that President Trump is trying to turn crossing the border illegally into a crime. Last time I checked, that was a crime. He's also saying that if an illegal immigrant gets a DUI, President Trump is trying to turn that into a crime. Last time I checked, getting a DUI, rather as an American or an illegal immigrant, is also a crime. So I guess the Democrat orthodoxy now is if you get into the country illegally, as long as you don't commit a violent offense, it's fine. I'm not really sure that's... I'm sorry?
But they're not extending these courtesies to American citizens.
Right.
So you misspeak in front of a congressional committee and they send 25 armed marshals to your house with automatic weapons and you face life in prison. I mean, why are they only liberalizing law enforcement for people from other countries?
Well, I think that's a good question for voters to ask Democrats, right? And I would also remind Senator Bob Menendez that the illegal immigrant that killed the legal immigrant, Corporal Ronald Singh, had 2 prior DUI arrests and had to come into this country illegally, obviously, which obviously not everybody that gets a DUI arrest is going to go on and commit some sort of heinous act. But point being is that he had illegal activity in his past and prior offenses here. And Tucker, this whole conversation with Senator Bob Menendez and Wolf comes down to the debate that recently happened over detention beds and Democrats wanting to cap the number of ICE detention beds.
No, I know.
And you've got people like the deputy ICE director, Matt Albence, saying, look, this is not a good idea because if we're capping the number
they don't
of...
care.
Right, they don't care.
Unfortunately, Elizabeth, we're being told we're out of time, and we didn't even get to Cory Booker and his groovy veganism, but you're going to have to come back.
All right, lots to talk about.
Man. Great to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.
In her brief time in the political limelight, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said a lot of interesting stuff. Here's one thing she said.
An agency like ICE, which repeatedly and systematically violates human rights, does not deserve a dime.
That's right.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. This is the war. This is our World War II.
I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
So not only dumb and totally ignorant of everything, but utterly self-assured. If there were a clinical exam for self-esteem, she'd be in the 100th percentile. How do people get like that? Is it our education system? Is it high schools? Is it colleges? We wanted to talk to someone on the front lines of this who might know the answer. Nicholas Giordano is a professor of political science at Suffolk Community College, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on.
Hi, Tom.
So there's a certain recognizable syndrome here where the people who know the least are the most self-confident. Where does that come from?
Well, it's the lack of critical thinking that exists. It's the superficial arguments they make that are completely unrealistic. If you look at the Green New Deal, it's incomprehensible, and when you're looking at it, she says the world's going to end in 12 years. So if we go with this plan and have to rebuild every building, it took us 13 years just to build the Freedom Tower, for instance. 6 years to build the Tappan Zee Bridge. Imagine having to do every single building in the United States up to new codes. It's just not going to work, and it's that they don't ask deep questions. The arguments are, it sounds good, people will support it because it's government giving us stuff, and so it's okay. But there are real consequences when you actually talk like this, because there are people that are going to take it seriously. You have a number of presidential candidates that have agreed with her plan. And when you're looking at the plan itself, you can't understand anything in it. It would lead to millions of people being underemployed or unemployed. Maybe they could learn code, who knows. It would lead to unconstitutional state violations because state and local governments are in charge of building codes. And so my question to her would be, has she read the Constitution, knows about the 10th Amendment and state rights?
No, but you heard, but I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding. You heard her say what matters is that she's a really good person and you're not. And so I'm thinking, as I'm watching this, remember that whole fad where we're supposed to give our kids self-esteem and that was the panacea? Did we create people like this when we did that?
Well, we did. Two things. The motto of the customer is always right created an entitlement culture, and then our children are precious also created the entitlement culture where everyone gets the trophy. When you're looking at it and you're trying to challenge the minds of the youth, they try and push back because they don't want to critically analyze the information to see if it really works. Page 10 of her New Deal talks about creating public ownership and receiving a percentage of compensation for the public ownership. Well, that's socialism. That's the very definition of socialism, and nobody's called her out on it in a sense. And it didn't work out so well for Venezuela. So is it really going to work out well for us?
No, not, I mean, I don't know. It's been great for, I guess, weight loss in Venezuela. They're starving.
They are.
Eating zoo animals. No,
and that's part of the problem. There's no critical thinking. And not only do you have that part, you have even more concerning, it talks about persons of the United States. It doesn't say U.S. citizens or U.S. persons, which is a definition for citizen and legal residents.
No, you're right.
So that raises the question.
Anyone who shows up gets to take your stuff. I mean, you can see where this is going. Professor, we're out of time, unfortunately. I commend you for having the patience to try and train a more impressive next generation of critical thinkers. Thank you for that.
No problem. Enjoy the night.
We have more on what's going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which has completely melted down. As you know, politically, top 3 Democrats all embroiled in scandals of their own making. Fox has now obtained Facebook posts from a second accuser against the Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, and we'll have those details after the break. Well, the top 3 elected Democrats in Virginia are still surrounded by scandal. Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax is refusing to step down in the face of multiple sexual assault allegations. Now, newly revealed Facebook messages obtained by Fox News show that his accuser, Meredith Watson, told friends about the alleged assault as early as March of 2017 and considered whether or not to come forward during the election of that year. In those same messages, Watson said she had not reported the attack back in 2000 when both were at Duke because she said the university mishandled a previous rape allegation that she had made. Tammy Bruce is a radio host, president of Independent Women's Voice, and joins us tonight to help assess the state of play in Virginia tonight. Tammy, thanks very much for coming on. What do you make of this?
Well, you know, it's kind of a sign of what the Democrats have brought, not just to Virginia, but to the country. You have a black man who is not getting due process, even though, for me, the accusers seem very credible. I'm not the arbiter of due process and of guilt and innocence. And yet, he is, for the South, it should be a sensitive issue. The hounding of a black man because of accusations, out of his job. He's been put on leave for the law firm that he works with, and he's part-time as lieutenant governor, making, I think, about $36,000 a year. So who knows how long that will be a tenable situation for him. And then you have 2 women who have, grown up in a supposed feminist environment, the Democrats controlling to some degree our social framework, who haven't felt comfortable still being able to report being assaulted. Now, women don't report for a variety of reasons because this is a complicated issue. But now we see the end result of what happens when you have a system that doesn't necessarily take women seriously still, which is what we've always argued for, and then later on in life finding out, the impact of what happens when we don't confront these issues. This is the result of what Democrats have said they are the champions of and they are representatives of, and obviously no one is winning in this situation.
No, that's for sure. So we've got a minute left. I'd just be interested, since you've seen a lot of stories like this and thought a lot about this subject, how do you think this specific story ends with Justin Fairfax?
Well, I think the environment is so toxic. He also has had, I think, 4 staffers leave, 2 at his PAC, 2 in his office over this. I don't think it's going to be tenable. I hope that there is some investigation that one way or the other, we have some information here. But I think that Virginia's got a lot to answer for. By the way, the state today apologized for lynchings. They apologized for the lynchings that have occurred in their state since the Civil War. So I think as a nation we have a lot to have to contemplate, but the answer is not sacrificing people into a volcano simply because of accusations. And I want women to have an environment where they feel safe in reporting when these events do occur.
I agree with that. That's a nonpartisan American point to make, and I'm glad
I think we all agree. Thank you, Tucker.
Tammy, thank you.
Thanks.
Really interesting story after the break. A feminist activist shut down by the left, of which presumably she's a part, for something called misgendering. In this case, misgendering a rapist. That woman will join us after the break to explain what this means and what it means for women in this country. Stay tuned. An activist in Baltimore says she was kicked off the city's Gay Rights Commission for using the wrong pronoun to describe a rapist. Trace Gallagher has more on this story, which we should clarify is real. Trace?
Yeah, hi, Tucker. Julia Beck was offered the chance to join Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh's LGBTQ commission. Beck thought it was a prime opportunity for her to voice the concerns of the underrepresented. But as the only lesbian on the commission, Beck claims she immediately felt excluded. She even wrote an article titled "How I Became the Most Hated Lesbian in Baltimore." Beck writes that she committed the unforgivable, saying she believes that even if a male identifies as a female, he's still a male. And she cited the case to have convicted convicted rapist Karen White, who is legally a man, admitted to raping several women, and was then sent to a women's prison in the UK, where he proceeded to rape 2 other female inmates. And after all that, it remains unclear if Karen White, who was David Thompson, is actually in the process of transitioning to a woman. But according to Julia Beck, questioning White's gender was the final straw, and she was kicked off the commission, writing, quote, "After a months-long witch hunt, I was found guilty of violence. My crime? Using